Well, it's been a long journey, I know, for all of us to get here. And one of my job descriptions at Open Minds is to share part of my story. But I want to say first, it's just an honor to be here with all of you because you have such courage. And I know that you have more background than I do in a lot of these UFO ET-related areas. But I've come here today to not just talk about myself, and please know this is not about me at all, even though I'm going to share a lot of it. I'm going to present to you something that I think is the most important document I have ever seen, and you will be seeing it for the first time. And of all people, you deserve to see this, and I hope that somehow your hearts will be touched by this as mine has been, because the people in this room, to me, are the most important people I've ever met, and I hope I can meet many of you, all of you, if it's possible. On Facebook, under my name, I'll have a link to this document that I'm going to tell you about in a few minutes. And an Indiana University student, Aubrey, just called and said that she set it up on a new Facebook site. Open Minds is going to have it on openminds.tv on their website. And I just can hardly wait. I'm bursting at the seams to tell you. But I'm going to start by thanking first Open Minds for opening my mind and so many others and inviting me here. And Paula Harris, who encouraged me to come, otherwise I probably never would have gotten on the plane. And so many other people, Dr. Stephen Greer, who with his wife took me to lunch one day in Washington and said, you have to tell the Von Braun story, at least part of it, because it's an important part of this. And I was ready to just die with it all. And since I've been threatened, my husband and I have lost everything. We've had a lot happen to us over the years to try to shut me up and people like us up. And unfortunately for the people who have tried to do that, if you're in the audience, bring it on. Because like you, many of you, I've had it. And it's time for the truth. And as my husband, John Cipher, the retired actor, said at the beginning and at the end, he actually concluded the Disclosure Project by when a journalist asked him, he asked Stephen and said to Stephen Greer, if even one of your witnesses is telling a lie, if they're not telling the truth, and this discredits the whole thing. And my husband said, Stephen, do you mind if I answer that? My husband's usually pretty shy. He takes direction. He does an acting thing, but in person, But he got up on the front, on the podium, and said, no, if only one person here is telling the truth, if only one person in this room is telling the truth. My God, what's going on? Disclosure has taken place. What are we doing here? We're just here to hear more truth. But I'm going to present something to you that's going to activate all of us, I hope. Because we have one chance, and I think it's now. And I'll tell you why I even think that. Just before I came, there's an article that you may have read that's going around in the paper. Perhaps they heard about this conference coming. But now the article is about how the Pentagon wants to rule defense allies in space. What they're saying is they want to strengthen the ability to use the weapons in space as an uncharted battlefield in space. Get it? Imagine what that's going to do to our issue here of the extraterrestrial beings, the off-planet cultures, the cosmic cultures, my God. And they're talking about the importance of satellites for waging and deterring war. This is their language. It's so bold. And a lot of people are buying into this, and I bought into it. I was a 6th grade school teacher with the classroom that wanted to get off the planet. We were in a flood area in Orlandria, Virginia, saying, how can we study if our area keeps getting flooded? I was swimming around in the streets one day telling the firemen where the people were in the houses, where the children lived to get them out of the flood zone. And look what's happening all over the planet, the climate changes, the people suffering. 500 million orphans and people still having children? How are we going to handle this? I mean, a lot of us have enough psychological problems from our own life stories growing up and what happened to us as children and so on. All these orphans. And the changes in the planet's Earth structure itself. We're in deep, you know what, and we have got to deal with these issues. And guess what? That we have the highest technology and the highest consciousness. We are able to solve these problems on the planet. But there are powers that be that are determined to stop us. I'm just going to back up for a minute, and I'm going to skip around because I've lost my notes. I wrote them for months and months to come here, and they're gone. So, my husband and I just got back from Ecuador. We lived there for a few years. I was working with the president of Ecuador. We were a couple of weeks away from the Minister of Defense himself, who was assigned to me from calling world leaders to come in to sign a treaty. We had bought, my husband and I, a hotel, built a conference center to have this meeting. We bought a farm across the road with a crop circle. We bought a home, guest houses. I had a horse sanctuary for abused horses. And we were infiltrated. The president's office was infiltrated. You read about it. There was a border war in Colombia. And he fired the Minister of Defense that I was working with and the 4 top military guys. And so we had no security. And then it happened in the little town that we were in. A big farce happened. Well, you and I have, I know, experienced betrayal at some time in our lives, but even some of my friends were spreading a discrediting campaign. Why? Who knows? Are they jealous, greedy egomaniacs? Are they paid off? Who knows? But what we do know is you and I have been blocked from the truth. We live under a canopy of lies behind a veil of secrecy. And thank goodness for meetings like this where the truth is coming out. And there are people here, I understand, that are still skeptics whether this is a real phenomenon or not. Forget it. If you don't believe it by now, you ought to go home. So now we have the truth. It's been disclosed, and we have some incredible speakers here. I can't wait to hear them myself because I was one of those people who I still have never read a UFO book, an ET book. I apologize because I know, like Paula Harris, I have her book. I have Stanton Friedman. Paula has these beautiful interviews in her new book, and I haven't read any of them because I didn't want to be tainted. I wanted to be able to come with my own true story if and when I ever came out with it, so here goes. From teaching school, where my classroom was launched into outer space, and Fairchild Industries called me and said, hey, they needed a woman to be pushed up the corporate ranks, and I had great legs, so they took me. And now I would get taken into the office of Wernher von Braun. And I don't know much about him, but I do know he's German, and my father wouldn't even buy a German car at the time. And so I walked in, and I was speechless, obviously. I'm not the type that's usually at a loss for words, but I could not talk when I sat across his desk. And he said, Carol, I couldn't teach 37 children, but I had a dream at 14 years old of going into space and finding out who we really are. And that was his whole theme when I met him. But I've met people along the way now who say, oh, Carol Rosin, she must be a Nazi lover. I have been told and seen myself written up as a Nazi lover, a Hitler lover, Wernher von Braun. I'm supposed to defend this man that I met that's one of the greatest visionaries of our time, that actually set off the space program. Of course, you'll see him in some of the peace groups. He set off the V2. Well, that's true. I have a picture of myself hugging a model of an A-10 bomber airplane. I mean, some of us, and I know some in here too, have worked in the military-industrial complex, and I have worked in that revolving door game. And so did von Braun, and he planned the escape to come to America, the land of the free and the home of the brave. Well, we are brave. Free, I don't know so much about. But I know that I have been called a CIA agent, an FBI agent, a KGB agent, an agent of the military-industrial complex. I'm a pathological liar. I eat dogs. There are so many rumors that I'm the Mata Hari of space. Ha-ha. And I've been written up this way. Somebody wrote an article one time that said, if Carol Rosin is all these things, she must be doing something right. And it's ridiculous. There's such a discrediting campaign going on, and it included about Wernher von Braun. And we have to stop this gossip. And if one of you goes out and gossips about me, this is my natural hair, and I don't have it like this to attract attention, then don't talk to me. Okay? I don't want any more negativity coming at me or anybody else in this room. We have to stop that gossip column, please, because we're discrediting ourselves, we're backstabbing everybody. It's not working. And I'm going to give you something that can bring us all higher into a higher frequency that Wernher von Braun would have loved, because his whole vision was to go into space peacefully. He worked in the weapons world, so did I. He worked under Hitler. Can you imagine? He said he tried to save some of the workers from having to work all those hours. They were told these guys were rocket scientists, and they were not there to kill people. They wanted peace in space. This was his whole theme. That's how I met this man. He took me into his office, and he was dying of cancer. And he wrote on a piece of paper, I wish I still had it, he was scribbling while he was talking to me. I was brought in for a 5-minute meeting that lasted for over about 2.5 hours. He kept shooing people away. And he thought it would be great if a woman took on this issue because he said nobody would close the doors on me. So now he's scribbling on this piece of paper, and at the end of talking to me, he handed it to me, and he had tubes draining out of him, and he was given 3 to 6 weeks to live, and he said, I'm going to stay alive to teach you what the real game is, and you have to go out there. And I can't tell you how many times I have quit. Some of the people here know because I wouldn't even sign the contract here until just a couple of weeks ago. I've so vacillated about even coming out again. Von Braun was writing the word humor on this piece of paper. In little circles, and he said, you have to keep your sense of humor. If you don't, this is going to kill you, because this is so serious, what's going on. The game in the military-industrial lab, university, NASA, and other space industries around the world, intelligence community, governments, complex, it's all inexorably linked. You can't even blame any one of them for what's going on, because it's all part of it. It's called jobs and profits. And there is a way to create them bigger than during any hot or cold wartime. It's about space. And I know there are people here like me who say, why would we even be going into space, this technology? We shouldn't even have it. We have so many problems and suffering going on the planet. Yes. But the problem is we're already there. There are thousands of satellites up there working right this minute, space stations with 16 countries working on it, and more plans for space. A hotel. I mean, it's incredible, and a space elevator. And we could have, instead of battle stations, space hospitals. When astronauts go into space, there's no gravity, so they grow at 1/2 inch to 1 inch. Think of the bones and the body, the solutions to healing and health that we can learn from that kind of information. From building a space hospital. It sounds bizarre, but the choice is a space battle station. Which do you want? Because we don't have a choice now. Now the choice is battle stations. It says it right in these articles. I have a couple of copies if anybody wants it, and I'll post it too. We can build space hospitals, space schools, labs, farms, industries. We can build hotels, space elevators, lots of spacecraft. And the choice at this stage, when I started talking this way in 1977 when Wernher von Braun died, people looked at me like I had landed. And maybe I have. Because I have an inner drive like you do to find out the truth and tell it and change it. The changing it is where we get stuck, though. How do we change this game? Before I came here, my husband stood at the airport at 4 o'clock in the morning in Medford, Oregon, with his hands on his hips saying, why are you going again? Don't you know what's happened to us already? I ended up, after leaving Ecuador for my so-called friends and the infiltration, in the hospital with a heart condition, with the doctors looking over me down at my husband saying, we're amazed that she woke up. She's got to get to the United States. We don't have the technology to measure her heartbeat that's gone off the scale. And I ended up in a heart hospital in the States with the doctor saying, you don't have heart disease, which is what I thought I had. They said, every time you say the names of certain people and certain incidences, your heart goes off the chart. And so the head of the hospital, the doctor, Dino, came in and handed me this piece of paper, and he said, you see these pills this other doctor gave you, did you take them? And I said, well, I tend to take them because they make me take the bottles, but I never swallow them, so no, I haven't had any. I'm trying for alternatives. And he said, well, don't take them. Do you want to throw them away or should I? And I went, oh my God, am I dead? I mean, what is this? And he said, no. You have to go out and meditate for 2 hours a day. You have to eat a Mediterranean diet and go vegetarian. And he started giving me this thing about how to be quiet and how to relax. And I'm here. So the alternatives worked. And even the head of the heart hospital said, you got to meditate. You got to concentrate on these other healing methods. And I thought, we're under so much stress. A lot of us here, too. Think about what Wernher von Braun must have gone through. The ridicule factor. How dare anybody say something negative about that man when he planned the escape to come to this country? Of course, most people don't know that. So I understand, okay. And yes, he worked as a Nazi, but that man designed a space program and got somebody like me involved. I was a teacher, child psychologist, which probably helped my working in the military-industrial complex. But anyway, this He was incredible, and I'm so moved by that man that he changed my life. He gave me the assignment to prevent the weaponization of outer space. How bad could he be? And yeah, we all have our backgrounds, and if anybody in here is absolutely perfect, I want you to come and introduce me to you, because I want to see who you are. But this man really was unbelievable. And guess who one of his best friends was? Timothy Leary. Do you remember Timothy? Harvard professor, several doctorates, woke a few of us up. And yes, I've tried it all. And my brain isn't burned out any more than his was. I took him to a doctor 2 weeks before he did deanimate, as he put it. And the doctor said, wow, this man's brain is normal, much to everybody's surprise. And here was Timothy Leary. I spent the last 6 months of his life with him. He honored von Braun in his book called The Intelligence Agents, which I called Timothy about. I met Timothy in the 60s. And somebody took me to his house, and I remember him patting me on the head saying, wow, isn't she cute? A school teacher's come to see us, in this big mansion with people running around naked outside with teepees and paint. And really important people in his house. And he said, here, just take this little piece of paper and put it on your tongue. Well, 3 days later, anyway, I learned that you could see through walls. I could see my circulatory system. No wonder they had X-ray machines invented. In fact, I met the person who invented MRIs. A lot of us were introduced to alternative states of consciousness, to higher frequencies, to this little teeny bit of brain that we used, and to what we can do, thanks to Timothy Leary. And so I want to honor him, too, because that's one of the people. And then Terence McKenna, who taught us about mushrooms talking to us. Sorry, but these are things that really woke a lot of us up in those days. And Buckminster Fuller. I played the world game with Bucky Fuller. He put me in charge of space. So we really looked at what could be done in outer space and how it could benefit the Earth in terms of providing solutions to urgent and potential problems. That's what this space technology and information sharing is all about. To me, it's actually being classified under this veil of secrecy and canopy of lies. But in fact, we have the tools to solve the problems of hunger, of the environment, of poverty, of education, of enhancing communication, of observing the planet. We have the solutions thanks to this space technology, much of which is being hidden from us, and many of us don't even know about it. So I'm mentioning it to you now, and I'll show it to you in this document too. Bucky Fuller knew about it. This is another great man on this planet who actually wrote the book Spaceship Earth, How to Live and Run on Spaceship Earth, How to Live and Work in Outer Space. I met a lot of those people I won't have time to mention that were working on that issue in the complex, who were conscious about it but needed their job just like today. So Bucky Fuller led me on to the United Nations because he was playing the world game in between. I worked on the First Earth Battalion. Any of you know Jim Channon? Jim Channon and I was a 5-star general. We took it all seriously, General Rosin here. And we actually created projects. I went to Russia practically 30 times. I was commuting. And I was going back in the days of Andropov. I got on the plane. I hear I was the first woman by myself who went there, not as part of a contingency of any kind, saying, what do you all want to be communists for? And then I found out about 1% of them were. And then I met with several. I finally got up to the days of, I don't have time to talk about it. Oh, there's a letter that I wrote to Gorbachev in a book, Dear Mr. Gorbachev, where I said, please say that you will never work on missile defense because it's really the first phase of space-based weapons. And he did say it. And I found over the years that if I wrote to Russia, in fact, it's one line of command there, so you can get answers back. Unfortunately now, with this new president, I don't know what's going on, Russians, I hope you stop doing this. All of a sudden they're saying, what is it that they want a seat in NATO, extended business and trade, that now they're saying they want to work on missile defense with the United States and these other countries? This article, this is ridiculous. We have to stop this. This cannot go on because the ETs, the cosmic cultures, can come in. Of course, they're here. They've been here. We all know it. At least most of us know it. But they're obviously waiting until we can raise our consciousness and get smart enough, and we have to all become educators. I'm an educator, to let people know that this has to stop. But we have an alternative now that's technologically, politically, socially, psychologically feasible. It's economically feasible. We have an alternative way that we can go that will transform the entire war industry into a space industry and acknowledge the reality of who we really are on this planet. And that's what you're going to hear about in a few minutes. So I went on now to go, after von Braun died, I thought, where am I going to go now? I quit the industry because I would have had to work on the A-10 bomber airplane. And I went on, I had learned a lot about public relations. Timothy Leary, I said, what's the most important thing in the world to you? And he said, PR. Good or bad PR, you can get your messages out. I learned a lot about all of this in the industry and what the game is that's played. So I went on to work at TRW because they needed a woman, a six-man woman on the team of the MX missile. So I worked on the MX missile. The job creator was about jobs. And through that, I met Congressman Joe Moakley eventually. He was my favorite, maybe the most honest, maybe the only honest congressman out of hundreds that I met. Sorry. And he agreed to introduce the first bill in the Congress calling for a ban on space-based weapons. And I said, why are you going to do this? And he said, because I have people starving in the streets in Boston. Well, this is something that went on and on with me. I kept meeting people. Tom Harkin introduced it. Eventually, Kucinich introduced it. And a treaty, thanks to Paul Hellyer, who is here, one of the heroes of our planet, who had an event where he brought about this many people together in Canada, about 1,000 people, and he introduced the first treaty to ban space-based weapons. Didn't go anywhere because the attention went back to the Outer Space Treaty of '67, which would never have banned all space-based weapons. It was just about weapons of mass destruction, and we're way past that now. Surely you've heard about mind control, psychotronic weapons. You've heard about all kinds of weapons. I mean, I was just looking at pictures of the hummingbird. Have you seen the hummingbird? It's a little hummingbird, but it's actually going to be sent out to do surveillance, but not surveillance for peaceful purposes, to see where the sick waters are. As Jacques Cousteau, whom I work with, also said, this is how we see where the sick waters are from the satellites. No, this is to help start to do what force multipliers do, to aim weapons. Not what satellites are for, not for you and me, anyway. So now I meet all of these people. I don't know what to do with von Braun after he left. What do I do with this message, this assignment he's given me to prevent the weaponization of space? Imagine that. So I go to the International Association of Educators for World Peace. I went up to the United Nations. They have thousands, hundreds of thousands, really, of papers on every aspect of peace, the environment, energy, every issue that you can imagine. And I found the International Association of Educators for World Peace. I just called its founder a couple of nights ago, Charles Marchea. He's still alive. Most of the people I called before I came here to get advice were all dead. Oh, God. And I said, does that make me one of the ones left? Am I a senior now? Ooh. So I talked to him, and he's still working on the peace issue. I went on to then start testifying before the House and Senate, thanks to Senator Claiborne Pell. What another hero he was. Looking at alternatives, looking at life after life, looking at all the ways to achieve peace. And one of his aides, who's now a senior in his 80s, helped write what I'm going to give you, along with Edgar Mitchell, the astronaut who now is speaking out on this issue, so courageous. And now, I worked with a man from Boeing Industries that used to be afraid of me. I addressed the U.S. Space Foundation. I was qualified because of my background and credentials to go before many of these very, very conservative audiences. You're so different. You look different. So these audiences that I had, I called this one the 600 greatest hawks in America. The Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines called the Unified Command, Space Command. Now they keep changing their names. Working on the Strategic Defense Initiative, of course, which has many names too, the Global Protection System, anything that you'll buy. If you buy that dead people are collateral damage, I mean, they come up with all these words. It's sickening to me. But I testified before the Congress and the Senate, thanks to Senator Pell, who got me into these situations in the testimonies. And I met the Women's Strike for Peace, who gave me my first office when I quit the aerospace industry, and TRW, where I worked, as I said, on the MX missile, but also on the space shuttle, on weather satellites, different projects for different industries that I then could consult to, testify before the Congress and Senate, and the President's Commission on Space. So I met a lot of space people across the board, most of whom don't really care about space-based weapons, don't even think about it. But that was my mission, to keep space weapons free. Well, after I testified, I found out that some of the peace community were blackballing me from even speaking. I was gagged. It was very gross. One of these big peace groups spread this rumor that I was a Nazi and all of that, a Nazi lover, and also that I was a pathological liar because actually I had booked a congressman for one of their speeches. He didn't want to go. He didn't go, but he didn't tell them that I actually had booked them. He used me as an excuse. In other words, people will say and do anything, and other people will believe anything. So it's very sad that we got splintered in the peace movement. We got splintered in the environmental movement. It's not easy to sort and discern, but if I learned one thing in that Ecuador experience, where we were robbed of everything we own. We no longer own the hotel, the farm, which had a crop circle on it that we got to give to the famous old people of Vilcabamba, who I was the coordinator of the Old People's Association. I hear many of them are dying now because of the infiltration, the pollution, all under the guise of sustainable development. Got it? Eco development. We go in and invade, do the land grabs, change everything. Oh, we're doing it for the good. Oh, if only I had known, I would never have done this. I would have gone to visit on tourism, not move. And I also bought into it's better, cheaper somewhere else, and the United States is going down. I am so happy to be back here. And I love traveling and going to other countries and meeting people because we're all one. And that was one of Wernher von Braun's messages, and all of these people that I met's messages. So now I'm going to take you into the document. It's a treaty. And as I said, it's going to be posted on the opensmind.tv website, and on my Facebook will lead to it. Here it is. Can you read it? It's kind of small print, so I'm going to go over it. And I have just a few copies. We can get some copies if you're desperate for them from Open Minds. This document is the first time ever in a treaty that's going to acknowledge, and in a UN treaty, the indigenous people who never get to sign a treaty. Can you imagine? And the cosmic cultures. And you're the first to see this. This is a milestone document and moment. The first two paragraphs basically say it all. The Outer Space Security and Development Treaty of 2011 establishes a framework and procedures to assure that space will be a neutral realm from which all classes of weapons are banned. All classes, so we don't have to define them. From which no hostile action shall be taken toward Earth or the surrounding cosmos. And then listen to this. The treaty invites nation states to become signatories to the treaty. Well, nation states are who signs a treaty at the UN. And invites all parties, these are parties to the treaty. This is new. All parties, including nation states, indigenous nations, and cosmic cultures, to commit to a plan and assist in the orderly development and implementation of a framework and procedures that will assure and verify space is and will remain a neutral realm from which all classes of space-based weapons are banned in perpetuity, permanently. Now I'm going to go on. These are the agreements I'm going to just quickly go over for you that the parties to the treaty agree to, and that includes the indigenous nations and the cosmic cultures. And I know some of you are thinking, well, what about the evil aliens, the evil cosmic cultures, the evil extraterrestrials, whatever you divide them into and call them? Before I go on with this, I'm going to tell you something else that I've only gone public with to MUFON, whom I thank too for supporting me and helping to get me here too, MUFON Phoenix. Chris, Stacy, Jim, the whole group, everybody that was there. I went public, and in that group, I thought 30 people would show up, and about 100 did, and I told them my story, and I want to share this with you quickly. I am an experiencer. I hid this for so many years. Thanks to Stephen Greer, who protected a lot of us, I didn't go public with it at the Disclosure Project. God, I'm breaking out in a sweat. This was the most extraordinary moment in my life when I had another man in the room, Dr. Robert Zanger, a famous, well-known therapist, who had come to visit me in Phoenix at a conference of the People's Network, actually, because I made him come and talk to me there. I didn't want to meet with him in my house because he seemed so obsessed with this idea about UFOs. And he was in the room with me when a line of ETs came in through the wall. One came forward between us and had a whole conversation for about an hour and a half. And I was told that he would remember some of it, I would remember all of it, and it's all coming back. It has stayed in my mind all this time. It was just before the Disclosure Project took place. And again, because I haven't read any books, I went to my first meeting with Barbara Lamb and her group the first night we were here, so I was in a room with 50 experiencers. Wow, what an experience that was. And I was told I have another message to give. So I get this assignment from all these different people I've mentioned, but this one is so profound. And it's been confirmed now that this is true. None of them are hostile now. Everything is in control in the universe. In fact, in the last couple of years, I've now heard that these experiments are not going on, that were either interpreted or in fact painful in many different ways, because I was told in my experience by this being that yes, we did these experiments, we're sorry we hurt people, and look what you do to other animals in your experimenting. And they were trying to find out who we were the way it was explained to me. Some are the Durga holding the light in peace, others are here killing each other and even eating each other. This is the language that was used for me. They can use the word God or anything that relates in religion, but it's all a spiritual message. In fact, all of these people that I worked with had a spiritual message, that that's what this whole event is about. It's a spiritual message. It's not about technology. It's not about politics. It's not about economics. It's about raising our consciousness to a higher frequency where we really all get that the grid is about love. It's about love. It's a grid. I've learned along the way from this experience that we really are all one, but I got to tell you, I'm discerning right now because we're in transition and I don't want these people around me right now who are causing the problems. On the other hand, if they're not hurting me specifically, I will address anybody because we have to get this message out that none of them are hostile. It's been repeated to me over and over in visits. It's changed. They too have evolved like we are. They're at a higher frequency. They know that some people won't believe it. That's okay. Let's find the people who do. And it doesn't matter for the sake of this treaty. The unique thing about what I'm going to read to you now is that we can all agree to it no matter what our belief system is, background, our journey up to this point, no matter how you think or interpret what's going on, or no matter even what the reality is in your life or in this whole issue. What I'm going to present to you now, I hope you can hear this, that you'll take a journey a step further with me. I've had to push myself up into it too, because this has been written by some amazing people that fit the time of where we are in this room, which is why I came to present this. So I'm going to go on now with just the agreements to start with the actual agreements that these parties will agree to. And I've been trying it out on different people, and it works. So if you would now, if I had an ecstasy tablet, I'd drop it all on you. Because it makes you drop all the crap, and get into that higher space. Okay. So now, you've taken your ecstasy. We're all in a higher place. So we are now reaffirming the urgency of preventing a destabilizing and threatening and costly arms race in space. Well, that's pretty obvious to anybody except those who come from a place where they still think weapons are going to make us more secure. And I know a lot of people like that. The second one is, the parties to this treaty recognize that the agreement by treaty to create a weapons-free space domain, ensure universal cooperation in space will save huge sums of money that otherwise are going to be spent on these dangerous polluting weapons. and technologies. They recognize that the elimination of space-based weapons is more easily accomplished with an agreement before further investment is taking place. In fact, you know there are billions of dollars. Do you know the R&D program of space-based weapons, although it will be denied like a lot of what you hear? This is the largest research and development program in recorded history mandated to weaponize space. And they'll say, oh no, it's only about ground-based weapons. Okay, so this is before any further investment. It's just easier, obviously, to eliminate the space-based weapons program. This confirms that it's the obligation of all state leaders to ban all space-based weapons, including the intention to weaponize space. Or that includes any celestial body or the moon or any space-based technology anywhere in space. We're talking now about in space. And at the end of this, you'll hear this is not about the ground-based systems. Yes, we want to get rid of polluting, dangerous weapons technologies on the planet, but we need to start someplace where you and I can finally be successful at doing something that there's no debate over. We can all agree to one thing. If we can, we've got it. So, we reaffirm the urgent need for agreements on concrete proposals and projects deriving from confidence-building world cooperative space ventures, which will prevent an arms race in outer space. Yes, I know some don't want weapons or technology in space at all, but since it's already happened and it ain't going to stop, this is calling for cooperation in space. Cooperation in space is what's going on right now, but it's about to flip if we don't jump in and stop this and call for cooperative ventures in outer space. And that will be confidence-building measures as people work in space, the astronauts and cosmonauts, the very first ones I met who met in space. There's a picture NASA had of their heads upside down, two of them. They said they absolutely cannot fight in space. It's too funny that they're even there. Like, it's funny that I'm even here to me, but they cannot fight in space, but they will if we let them get away with this one. Next, recognize the information and data gained from cooperative space exploration and development will provide unlimited benefits and opportunities to all humankind in areas of health. I mentioned all the ways that we could have high technology and higher consciousness and information to heal that doesn't require the kind of drugs that aren't the ones that Timothy and the guys were talking about. I mean, these are the ones that you hear on television, that here, swallow this, you'll feel better. Just if you go blind, or you get diarrhea, or you in fact get depressed, or suicidal, or you kill yourself. You know those big... Education, I'm an educator. We need high technology. I helped organize the first 24 countries in two-way audio-visual satellite link-ups. I helped set up 5,000 ground stations in India on the ATS-6 that I worked on with Von Braun, the application technology, 6 most complex, huge satellite in existence. Unbelievable experience, because I learned, and Global Educators magazine wrote it up, that there are lists of cooperative ventures that you can do in space that I got actually from Russia from one of my trips. They stuck it in my pocket, I published it, and then soon we saw the Apollo-Soyuz link-up. And we started seeing how satellites could provide global education. Imagine 3 satellites, that's all, in geosynchronous orbit, miles and miles above the Earth in geosynchronous orbit. 3 of them provide the footprint to the world. And we could have global education. We could share, respect each other's cultures, learn about each other via satellite, not classify all this information. To me, as an educator, there's so much that we can do. Thankfully, we've now got, and the children know how to do it, Facebook and all the other social networking technologies and computers where I worked with Peace Child and we had to send videos to each other. Now you can do it on the computer if any of you are doing things like that. It's the most amazing thing for homeschooling, for education in general, and we need that. The economy, my gosh, we keep hearing about stimulating the economy. Have you noticed with all the problems you hear about the economy, we are not hearing about cutting the war budget. And if they do start to cut the war budget, it's something that we either finished working on already or we don't need anymore because they've got something new and better. So here we're talking about stimulating the economy. Imagine the Apollo. Von Braun told me how many people, thousands of people worked on just the Apollo program, but now the world is in space. I spoke at the International Astronautical Federation Congress years ago, and it was about the economic benefits of what's going on in space. And now we can stimulate the economy no longer with the war machine. Listen, we're going into space whether we like it or not. If we create a huge space program and we include what we've learned and we're learning and will learn when our friends, our visitors come in and we invite them for real, where they know they're going to be safe and not shot down. Will somebody please tell me where the landing pads are being built, or give us the money and we'll get the architects and artists together and we'll start building them like in the movies, but make it real. We can stimulate the economy with more jobs and more profits than during any hot or cold war time by stimulating the space program without the mandate to weaponize space. That's what this is about. Okay, I'm going on. Security. Security. So many of us come from fear. I came from fear coming here. But we come from fear because of our experiences growing up to this point. And look around the world. We're so lucky. We've got clothes, we've got food, we've got rooms to stay in, we've got cars, we got here. The world is suffering. I don't know about you, but I've been to these countries where I've walked down the street and a little boy with his mother living in a corrugated cardboard handed me a ring. The ring was from a can that somebody had given him. People are suffering around the world. We have to stop this. We have the technology to do it, and this issue gives us the solution to it. So now we have security that's going to be based not on more weapons, but on collaborative ventures in the highest of technologies and in the highest of security that's based on sharing of information. The information exists, but it's all classified. So now we have a chance we have the technology. If you go to a map, there's a map I almost showed here from it's called the Global Incidence, the website, globalincidence.map.com. It's a live map, and you can see all the earthquakes and weather things and gang wars, and you can even get the terrorist threat, and you can sign up for more of a security part of information. It's for the public. The information's out there. We can even get to it, the Global Incidence Map, globalincidence.map.com. Amazing. And there are a lot of live maps. All the information's out there. It's how it's used and whether we participate or not and demand that this war game stop so that we can have our visitors come in and learn and share the information. So let me go on. Energy. Of course, there are many experts here. I'm not a technical expert, but look at the energy sources and look at the information that we're going to be able to get from when the craft are allowed to come in for us and our scientists. I know of about 500 of them that have models that they want to build. Imagine what we're going to learn when they come in safely and we can actually not have to go down 15 levels underground, and I'm told if I go, I can't get out. The energy sources are there, and we don't need this oil business and fossil fuels destroying our planet and the indigenous culture covered with oil. How dare them get away with that? Stop it. And this is how we're going to stop it. The last one on this page, acknowledge that we are not alone in the universe. This is in a treaty. I'm not alone in the universe, that there are cosmic cultures that will import allies for our security and development, and that our national and international policies must reflect this reality. This is in a treaty. This has to go. We have to really deal with this on our kind of intelligence kind of level. Finally, I'm going to turn the page here. I think. Yes, okay. Now, this is, there's this and one little other page of the parties, and this part's so important. The rest is treaty stuff. Okay, in this one, excuse me, I'm not to be emotional because, we women are too emotional and shouldn't be this way. Okay. Acknowledge that from the beginning of the nuclear weapons testing, terrestrial craft have demonstrated a capability to selectively shut down communications or the power of participating in operational units. They've appeared over ICBM fields in several countries, causing non-destructive failure of dozens of ICBMs, taking them out of the operational status for days. Well, after the Disclosure Project, in fact, in September, you heard about Leslie Kane's wonderful international press conference. Okay, now I'm going to talk to you about the military one that took place on September 27th. I think that's the date of 2010 where Robert Salas Haynes came public, and Salas, of course, said there's absolutely no evidence whatsoever that these craft have come in a dangerous way or in a threatening way to this planet. They've just displayed what they can do by shutting down our missile silos. Missiles. This other newspaper article's talking about more missiles, but they can shut them down. I mean, what is going on? This is such a waste of time. They're in total denial. They need psychiatric care. These people that... And the next one, realize that the demonstrated capability of extraterrestrial cultures from the multiverse, like that new word, the universes. Von Braun used to say the universes. We need to find out who we are in the universes. The multiverse. To neutralize any missile or nuclear capability is in itself not a threat message, but does serve notice of our limited understanding of physics and clearly dangerous consequences of continuing to use destructive technologies. I mean, have these guys not noticed what's going on? Next one, affirm the possibility of reclaiming the peaceful future of humankind in a safe environment on Earth is intimately linked with curbing our violence towards each other and Earth, and with preparation to survive as Gaia heals herself. And that the council to support the cosmic civilizations thousands of years our senior would be exceedingly helpful. Well, duh. Okay. Next, note that every class of space-based weapons, including weapons of mass destruction or precise destruction, is a symbol of fear, of our fear, for which violence provides no remedy. Remember that book, Missile Envy? You know, the comparison. What do they look like? I mean, this is about fear. Next, recognize that space must forever be free of man-made hazards and must be a passageway to the secrets of our past and the challenges of our future. Yes. These parties, again, are inspired by the great prospects of Earth taking its rightful place in the cosmos and citizens of off-Earth realms sharing the fruits of their cultures with humankind. Yes. Reaffirm that preventing placement of space-based weapons will avert resulting consequences, risks, and dangers to peace on Earth and peace in space. Believe that the world cooperation in space will contribute to developing mutual understanding and to strengthening security based on a new form of verification and enforcement. Other treaties didn't get passed because they said, well, we can't verify what's going on. Well, guess what? We have the technology now, and everybody knows what's going on. And in the technology in the military-industrial complex, they know a whole lot more than we do. Everybody knows what's going on. There are no secrets. I addressed the CIA one time. I was invited. They invite activists for different things, and they give you a couple $100, and then you address like the 40 top managers of CIA who are all named George. And the title of my speech was, You Can't Keep Secrets Anymore. And I invited a friend of Jim Channon's to come up, and I got them up the elevator in the Xerox building, of course. It wasn't the CIA. And we had a computer going, and I had like 100 people sending messages into this meeting. And the messages, of course, were all about peace and how the CIA shouldn't keep secrets anymore, blah, blah, blah. This was 100 years ago now. But the question that I was asked was, how did you do this by this group? And I said, well, I used your elevator and your operator, and we hooked up the computer to your system. Well, now we're all hooked up to computers. You can go on the internet and find almost any kind of information. It's bizarre. Everybody knows you can't keep secrets anymore. Joke. Okay, so now, we have new forms of verification and enforcement that applies the latest tools of technologies for observation, information, cooperative relations, building trust and transparency. Well, what I'm really talking about here, the new enforcement is based on cooperative ventures. Enforcement used to be done with weapons. But how do you end up now not having enemies? You make them a friend, or you walk away. You don't have to have them in communication with you. I mean, you don't have to have them attacking you. You don't have to have weapons. In fact, you have to have enhanced communication or get a divorce without having the big fight, you know? You can enforce things now by cooperative ventures in the highest of technology. You're in space. We're in space on Spaceship Earth, but they're in space on space stations with all kinds of technologies about to be put into space. So cooperating is the enforcement. It is the transparency because you're working together. If I'm working with you and I know what you're doing, I'm being transparent with you. You see, I can't be shut up. So I can communicate with you, and you can communicate with anybody. My formula is you're 3 or 4 people away from anybody you want to meet, and it works. Think about it. You want to go meet somebody, you're 3 or 4 people away from that person. Okay, so there's new forms of verification because we have the technology to see and get the information for what everybody's doing, and we're building cooperative ventures in space. That's all that's there now, and I'll go on with that in a minute. Understand that this space treaty is now verifiable and enforceable via applying monitoring, observation, and information sharing technology, both existing and forthcoming. These parties are inspired by the great prospects of benefits and opportunities for stimulating economy, jobs, products, and services to solve urgent and potential problems of humans, of the environment, of animals. It's written here that includes it all, the problems of humans and the rest of the biosphere. We have the technology to solve those problems. It's called space-based and space-age technologies and information sharing. Recognize that our space assets can be protected only by mutual cooperation and verification, and that this treaty will accomplish this objective. And you know, without this treaty, we can't do it. It's not going to happen. So now we go on to the end of the parties' agreement. We realize that we are one. Imagine that showing up in a treaty. Imagine we are one interconnected and independent and interdependent human species, and we are determined. You and I are the parties to this treaty, by the way. We are determined to live in peace with all our neighbors on Earth and in the universes. Are we not? So, we go on to say, affirm that this is the policy of the parties of this treaty to permanently ban all space-based weapons and to proceed into space cooperatively. We are convinced that this treaty will further the purposes and principles of the Charter of the United Nations. It fits. Now we go on, and this is really treaty-ese, but it's so important. The first part of it is details, the second part is just treaty stuff, but the first I'll go over with you. In Article 1, and this is now for the nation states to sign. The nation states are who sign these treaties. We're parties to it, but the nation states sign it. Each nation state signing and ratifying this Outer Space Security and Development Treaty of 2011 shall implement a ban on the research, development, testing, manufacturing, and deployment of all space-based weapons. Now, implement the ban on research. Research, I want to just let you know, is a key word here, because you will hear, we're only doing research. It's merely research. Well, research can include development, deployment, launching of these weapons. So, second one, implement a ban on the use of space-based weapons, the purpose of which is to destroy or damage objects or beings located in space. In other words, we can't shoot them down in space. Again, we're not dealing with Earth right now. We know we want to, but this is the step towards that. This is achievable. Next, determine any current research, development, testing, production, manufacturing, and deployment of all space-based weapons. Terminate it. We have to end this. We really have to end this. Each state signatory to this treaty shall support and encourage other nation states to sign, ratify, and implement this outer space treaty. It's called the Outer Space Security and Development Treaty. And it's called that, by the way, because we're dealing with security, how we build a world security system, but that now is based on cooperation in space, which includes and for the first time acknowledges the cosmic cultures. Now, listen to this. We don't have to go send this treaty to all the leaders of the world. We only need 9. After the first 9 nation states sign and ratify the Outer Space Security and Development Treaty of 2011, the Secretary General of the United Nations shall submit to the General Assembly of the United Nations the official recognition of this treaty henceforth as ratified law. 9 nation states. If I hadn't been stopped in that other place, we would have had the leaders. But I very stupidly, I think, told the wrong people, and I was doing it alone because I had given up from all of what I was going through with the ridicule factor and the confrontation and the blocks and my biography. It was just too hard, so I left the country to try to do it. But I can't do this alone. I won't do this alone. If you guys don't participate and get this treaty to the leaders of the world, we're screwed, because I'm passing the torch. I'm here doing my part. I'm going to work with everybody. I'll work with every strength of my being, but we all have to participate in this, those who want to, and those who don't. So now, this treaty, nothing in this treaty shall prohibit. Now, this is good, because people in the military-industrial complex think that peace activists are trying to shut them down, and a lot of us have been in a way. But it doesn't work. They don't even pay attention to you. They just completely ignore you, or at best, you've gone into Congress to lobby. What's the common phrase? Yes, I'm very interested in this. We will take a look at this. As soon as they say that, you know they're handing it over to their aides, and that's it. But here, nothing in this treaty shall prohibit the following space-based ventures that are not activities related to space-based weapons, including space exploration. Of course we want to explore space. We want to go out with our friends. Space research and development, we're not going to stop development and research, so we're going to allow that. Testing, manufacturing, production, or deployment of non-weapon systems. What's not prohibited are commercial, civil, entrepreneurial, and military space-based ventures that are confirmed by the Peace and Space Office that you're going to read later, is actually formed by this treaty when the first 9 nation states sign it. They're not, as long as the projects that are going on, including in the military, now I know this is controversial, so listen, or it may be. The military has a very important role to play in space, and this treaty is going to define it. They're in space. It's of a non-weapons nature now. If we catch it on time, they can pave the way into space safely. They can bring our friends in safely. They can actually provide us with the kind of information, observation, sharing of information that we need, that they're already doing, but we need it. We don't want it classified anymore. So I'll go on with that in a minute, because it's actually talked about in here. So we're not going to prohibit commercial, civil, entrepreneurial, or military space ventures that are confirmed by the Peace and Space Office not to be any part of a space-based weapons system or to have any intention of becoming or supporting space-based weapons systems. Cooperative space-based ventures with any people on Earth or with members of any cosmic culture, that's encouraged by this treaty. First time ever. Okay, one more. Uh-oh. Well, this is going on. I want to go back one page. Okay. Did I get to Article 3 somehow? No. It's up there? Okay, good. Here's the military and space one, thanks. Each nation state to this treaty shall not base any weapons or any object on celestial bodies located in space. And this is really important, because you're going to hear about the asteroid threat and all of that. We just do not want weapons put on those bases or on any celestial body. But listen, Permitted is the establishment of space-based military bases or operations, including communication, navigation, reconnaissance, early warning, remote sensing, and surveillance. These are not weapon systems. These are things that we can use to see, as Jacques Cousteau said, where the sick waters are. We as educators want to teach our children about what's going on the earth. We need this information for the earth changes that are coming about. We need to be able to observe the land, sea, and air and space, and that's what the military systems provide us with, that information. So we have a role for them to play. You know, when you're a teacher, you give the boys something else to do and they stop fighting? Okay. I'll go on to the next one. The use of military technology or personnel for peaceful space-based purposes, in other words, that do not use any equipment or facility in space that's related to the research, development, testing, manufacturing, production, or deployment or application of space-based weapons. That is not permitted. So we've covered all the areas, and it works because it's verifiable. The Peace in Space Office. For the peace activists, this is so incredible, because it's a United Nations Peace in Space office that's going to be established and equipped and organized by the nation-state signatories, by these countries that sign on to the treaty. And you can go on and read all of this, because it just goes on to define that we need this monitoring, verification, enforcement measures based on cooperation, and this office is going to confirm, to monitor everything that's going on in space, of a commercial, civil, entrepreneurial nature included, because those systems are all inexorably linked. And now Article 4. There are definitions, because some people may not understand what space-based weapons are. They're not earth-bound. And this will go on to tell you what's specifically allowed and prohibited. I want to explain something. On Earth is where some of these systems are. A missile going through space, although I've been on panels when military people, including I was on a road tour debate with General Daniel Graham, who introduced the SDI, the Star Wars program, which I named on CNN, that these people will say, well, you can't win this anyway because you can't ban weapons from space because a missile goes up into space. But that's not space-based. A beam, HARP. The ground systems are here. They go up into space, come down. They could be aimed into different places, but they're ground-based. This particular treaty does not ban the ground-based weapon systems. What it does ban is anything that's based in space, and that's where we can win this first step. You see? And this will explain this as you read it further. The term space and outer space is defined as about 100 kilometers, maybe 80 miles or so above the Earth. So anything that goes through space like that, not a space-based weapon. Don't fall for that if they start saying, well, they're already in space. Even if they are in space, even if they're weapons in space, this verifiably outlaws them. Okay? So, space-based weapons are defined as being anything that's based in space that can be used to damage or destroy objects or beings, humans living or working in space, or beings of our friends on Earth from a location based in space. This treaty bans all space-based weapons, including the dual use of space technology, of space-based objects or technology when it's located in space with the intention to be used as a space-based weapon that could damage or destroy any object or being on Earth or in space, from space. Okay, we're getting down to where I'm going to end this part of it. Weapons launched from the Earth, again, that travel through space but are not based in space are not banned by this treaty. We can go on and make more laws and treaties, but this one is going to aim at the one thing based in space because it's achievable. The term space-based weapon and space-based weapon systems are defined for the purpose of this treaty in order to identify weapons, devices, and systems that are based in a space location. I'm being very clear with this, and so is the treaty. Number 6 in this first part, this treaty prohibits, and this is more defined, the firing of one or more weapons based in space that would be intended to collide with any object or being in space, collide with. The next one is detonating explosive devices. By the way, this will cover the weapon systems that you and I have heard about, know about. Detonating any explosive device that's based in space in close proximity to any object or being in space. Directing, and this one I know a lot of you know about these beams in space and mind control and what the possibilities are. My God, psychotronic weapons. I invited Tom Bearden to be on his first panel where it was called Toward Mind-to-Mind Communication at the World Future Society years ago. It was his first time appearing in public. His hands were sweating. And he was talking even then about mind-to-mind communication and what technology could do to control our minds, how we think, how we act as an individual, as a group, make us sick, make us well. This is the kind of thing we're going to ban from being put in outer space as a first step. And it's called here, directing any space-based source of energy, because this is energy weapons, directing any space-based source of energy offensively against any object or being in space or on Earth. Next, basing controls or systems of any space-based weapon that are or could be intended to collide with or inflict damage upon objects or beings. Imagine us working in space or our beings coming in. To collide with or inflict damage upon any objects or beings in any location in space, including on the moon, on celestial bodies, on satellites, on craft, on the space stations, or on any off-planet visitor craft. Next, Article 5. This now gets into, we're starting to get into the legalese, but the first part is the United Nations Office of the Outer Space Affairs is hereby being appointed to be responsible to coordinate the first meeting, listen to this, the first meetings between members of cosmic cultures and with units of the United Nations and representatives of the signatory nations and indigenous First Nations. Yeah. A permanent cosmic culture liaison. You know, we got lied to about the first thing in the United Nations they were going to have. You heard about this on the news, a liaison. We got it here, covered. A permanent cosmic culture liaison will be available to the United Nations Security Council to answer questions and provide counsel on the issue of security and development of Earth. How do we know that could happen? Because many of us are in touch. We're being visited. That is denied by certain entities and people in our governments, especially in this country, sad to say, but that's the truth. I didn't believe it myself. I ran a Space and Defense Institute. If somebody said the word UFO at that time or ET, I didn't even hire them because I thought they were crazy. And now I've had them walking through the walls having meetings with me, and I can't take a shower because the messages come through and the water conducting, I'm told. So I'm one of the crazies with you. And now we have a permanent cosmic culture liaison will be available to the United Nations Security Council to answer questions. Next, the cosmic culture liaison will assist in identifying and neutralizing, which we now know they can do, in neutralizing any attempt to deploy or use space-based weapons. Well, we already know they can neutralize our missiles, which is why I said this is so stupid when I hear that people in different countries, and the Russians know better, want to work on missile systems. What? Article 6. The provisions of this treaty that ban all space-based weapons shall apply to all nation states, whether or not they are signatories to this treaty. And we have ways. Okay. The treaty shall enter into force upon the signing and ratification of just the first 9 signatory nations. This treaty is open to all nation states for signatures. If they don't sign it, they can come into it at any time. And then I just wrote some little points of clarification at the end, but we've pretty much gone over them, that this treaty does not ban weapons located on Earth. It bans the weaponization of space, not the militarization. I have redefined these words many years ago, and now you see the word weaponization appearing. It's because the militarization of space you and I can redefine. And that's what we need to do, because look, These militaries are not going to dissolve and disappear and go away. Ain't going to happen. And they're so well funded. They're so well organized. They made my husband and me honorary Marines. You know why? John was on the show Major Dad, and I was consulting to General Joe Hoare, who took Schwarzkopf's replacement in a meeting in Tampa, Florida, where I stood up in the meeting and said, hey, how many of you speak the language of the 500 people, of the countries that you're going to and you're assigned to? And 3 people raised their hands. So where did you learn about these countries? Well, most of them learned about them from the books and what they were taught. So they're taught, you know, if you go into Colorado Springs to the miles of underground mountains, underground caves and roads, which are, of course, all over under the world, you get taught about the weapon systems that are threatening all of us. And it's all a lie. It's a lie. Because we're not enemies. And if you go to different places, we just need to learn about each culture, and we need to respect each culture. And we can't even do it on this planet. So how can some of these people do it related to the off-planet culture, to the cosmic culture issue? You know, we've got to get people on this planet to respect and understand each other's cultures. We've been working our butts off for this for years, but now we have a new way of doing it by bringing in the cosmic cultures, because there is no evidence of them being hostile, trying to take over our planet. It's not happening, and it's not going to happen, and that's the message I came in with from the ETs themselves. So we have redefined giving the military a new role to play in space that will trickle down, because once we get this treaty signed, we put a literal lid on this war machine, and it has to transform. And most of those guys don't care what they do. In fact, some of them have said to me, we'd rather pave a safe way into space and build modules in space. Wouldn't that be fun? I mean, most of these kids that go to war and put on their uniforms for these, what I call suicide missions. We talk about suicide missions coming over here with people that are angry with what we've done, as though they're jealous of what we're doing. What? I mean, people are trying to communicate with each other. And we have a way of doing it by bringing in this most important issue, because now we've got a strategy, and the strategy is all within this treaty if you would take time to study it. It will be, by the way, on the openminds.tv. It's been launched already, this treaty, so you can download it. It will be on a Facebook page that a University of Indiana student called me in the middle of the night and said that if I'd give it to her, she did launch it onto something called, on Facebook, Cosmos Treaty. And you can look up Carol Rosin and sign up on my Facebook page or on Cosmos Treaty so that I can continue to communicate with you and we can update each other on what we're doing. And your assignments are, read this treaty and study it, but more importantly, if you could just get this treaty to one nation-state leader, let's start with Russia and China and anybody else that you know. I'm an official advisor to the People's Republic of China. They do not want to put weapons in space, but they will. I've been to Russia, like I said, many times. Their position until recently has always been that they wanted to ban space-based weapons and not work on missile defense, but all these countries see what's going on from this aggressor nature country. And so they feel that they have to retaliate or be bigger or join in with NATO or get extended business and trade, whatever their reasons are. We have a chance now to get them to all get on the same page if we can do it. If we can let go of everything in our past for a minute, of everything that we know, and just focus and get on one page together, this page, and get it to the world leaders. And as many people as can do it, just keep sending it, until they start to see that we have an educational tool, but that it's real. It's not a hoax. It's not just to have this be a piece of paper to read. It's starting in this room. And if it doesn't start in this room, I'm sorry, I don't know what's going to happen to all of us, but I think it's the worst. And so I've joined CERTS. You can join it in this country. Are any of you CERTS members? The Community Emergency Response Team. It's local all over the country. And I've become a first emergency responder. I'm a first responder. I wear a helmet and says CERTS. I put on a vest and I go to, and I've got my CPR training. I can now go and any of these emergencies that we hear might happen, earthquakes, floods, fires, heart attacks, I'm there. I almost brought my hat with me. But they wouldn't let it on the plane unless I signed papers or something. So I can project, but okay. The CERTS, Community Emergency Response Team. I highly recommend you look it up in your neighborhood because it's free. You don't have to pay for all these courses that you can take on how to get trained for an emergency. That's one thing. And guess who funds it? Are you ready for this? Homeland Security and the Department of Defense. So I knew they could do it. So I'm learning all this stuff from them. But I'm renaming it the Cosmos Emergency Response Team, and I hereby appoint all of you as first responders to the Cosmos Emergency Response Team, because we're in a state of emergency on this planet, and we all know it, and this is a way out of it. And we are all children of the universe. And a good friend of mine put together something that kind of says it all. John Denver, who wanted to fly into space. And we talked a lot about this issue, and he knew. So I want now for the guys in the back room to put up the message from John Denver that I want to bring in to share with you. That's me.
To us all, to smell the rose's fragrance, to hear the songbird call, to watch the distant moonlight fill the coming of the tides, to understand that life is more than always choosing sides. What can be seen of sailing ships and kings, and some are given feet of clay, some are given wings, some must struggle just to breathe, some have a golden spoon, and some will never leave the nest, while some walk on the moon. Know the life that lives within the silent hills is just as rich and beautiful and just as unfulfilled as man with all his intellect, his reason and his choice. Oh, who's to say the nightingale has any less of voice? The dolphins twist and dance and sing to one another. The cosmic ocean knows no bounds, for all that live are brothers. The whippoorwill, the grizzly bear, the elephant, the whale, all children of the universe, all weavers of the tale. Dream yourself to sleep. The hawk flies with the morning dove, the lion with the sheep. As far away as you may go, we'll never be apart. It's in your dreams that you will know the seasons of the heart.
I used to write for a magazine that was produced by Anne Kralkamp, who's here, called Crone Chronicles, and she introduced one of those articles by asking me how I felt about something. And I said, feelings? Who has time for feelings? Well, I feel all of you. I feel in solidarity with all the people suffering and the workers all over the world fighting for freedom. I feel for those of us here who have been ridiculed, who have been told they're crazy because you're not, and for all the people that I've mentioned and so many more. And I want to end with Timothy Leary, because Timothy, who I took care of and helped launch his ashes into space through the Celestis Company, and I could hear him laughing. In fact, when he died, I had my fingers on the pulse of his neck, and I heard him say, as he left his body, "Go behind the dresser and get a camera and take my picture." And I thought, I have really lost it now, and I did, and there was a camera taped to the back of the dresser. We have a life that Timothy described as we're going into space whether we like it or not, space migration. We're increasing our intelligence squared, and we're going to live longer than ever, and we live longer than we think out of these bodies. And so he left us a final message that said, today, and this is the day before he deanimated, today we move to the next place, and we do. Use light to enjoy space for individuals. We're light workers. What you say to the young people means everything. Tell them to ride the light into space with their friends where we will all meet again. Light is the language of the sun and the stars where we will all meet again. We can have peace on Earth through peace in space. We have peace in space. The cosmic cultures have come to deliver that message. Believe it. They want it. They want to come here. They want to share. And we want them to come and share. I know you do too. So please take this treaty seriously. Send it to some world leaders. Go on the internet. You can find out how to email it or send it in the mail. Get your friends to do it. Take this treaty and educate people in your communities, whoever you can reach. And thank you. Thank you for being here and for going on with your messages that each of you have coming from your own frame of reference, as I do. Thank you so much for listening and being here.